Yo, what's up, guys? What the fuck is up? In this video, we're going to be doing a Week 9 fantasy draft. So it's a mock draft. We want to see who we would have picked. So it's kind of like combining hindsight as well as kind of a rest of season rankings type of thing. So this takes into account, of course, injuries, of course, people who haven't performed, people who we think might perform going down the stretch. It's a combination of all. I think it's kind of a fun video to make, a fun little experiment. I mean, I've already gone back and looked at some of my past drafts over the off season, and just like regret. I'm like, I don't know. What's the opposite of like roster baiting, where you're just like jerking off over your roster? What's the opposite of that, where you're like, fuck, regret. Round 3, why did I take Pitts? Round 4, why did I take fucking Joe Blow, Terry McLaurin, whatever? So this is our way of kind of seeing what we would have done differently and what we expect to happen over the next couple weeks of the season, right? So I'm going to go ahead and start the draft. I'm gonna pretty much pick every pick, right? And I think it only makes sense to do maybe like the first 3 rounds. I think after that it just becomes, I mean, it's going to take too long, and we're going to use sleepers ADP, which is pulling from preseason rankings, so that's already invalid. So we're just going to talk about like the first. I'm going to do a lot of insight into like the first round, so the first 12 picks, and then kind of shorten the insight as we move along. So let's just hop right on into it. And I think the first player who makes the most sense at the 1-1 at this point is Christian McCaffrey. Not only has he produced leading up to this point really well. I mean, he's been averaging like I think 17 fantasy points on average over the first weeks, and that's before that Niners blow up game of 38 half PPR points, 36 half PPR points. So he's been great, man. I mean, he's been getting production when he was with the Panthers, and now he looks like he's going to be a league-winning running back now with the 49ers based on his workload. He threw a touchdown, he ran one in, and he caught a touchdown, so he had the trifecta. And he's on, the Niners offense, which is one of the most dynamic, one of the best offenses. And I expect his workload to be crazy. They sold the house for him, so I expect them to use him accordingly. So I think he has to be the 101. And I think it's clear, right? So I think the next couple of guys you can maybe argue a little more. And I would say that the number 2 guy on this list, the number 2 guy has to be either. Okay, so I'm gonna say Austin Eckler. And we'll talk about why, right? So he had a couple of tough weeks, like week 1 and 2, were I think pretty tough for Austin Eckler. But he's a part of one of what we expected to be one of the better offenses in the league. Now they're banged up. He hasn't. Justin Herbert hasn't had Keenan Allen for most of the season, so he's been struggling. And that offense has just been generally struggling. Their defense is banged up. Defense is struggling. Just lost J.C. Jackson for the year, which is, I think, a good thing for the offense, right? So you have a worse defense, means you have to score a lot of points. And I think Austin Eckler is one of the safer picks moving forward, right? So not only up to this point where he's like the number 2 running back on the season, I think he's going to continue to produce at that level. So it's tough to argue, right? So and on that note, I think Nick Chubb and Barkley can take either of these spots, and Barkley could also be the number 2 pick. Right, but I think for the sake of this, because I'm going to get a lot of hate if I don't put Barkley at 3, I think I'm probably going to get hate already because I'm putting him at 3. It's Barkley, right? I mean, he's been kind of the steal of the draft for most people. Most people got him like in the late first, second round pre-draft or preseason, and he's turned out to be one of the better, most effective running backs, one of the safest plays on a week to week basis. And yeah, you can't go wrong with Saquon Barkley. The Giants are 6-1, I believe, or 7-1. It's something crazy. I have like 1 loss, and he's the focal point of that offense. So I don't imagine that stopping. Maybe they lose some more games moving forward, but I don't imagine Saquon himself being any worse than he was. And on that note, I already mentioned Nick Chubb's name. I think Nick Chubb has to be the number 4 here. Some of you might be asking where's Cooper Kupp, where's Stephon Diggs, and I just think that because of how much I personally value running backs, it's usually going to be running backs in like the top 4 or 5 picks for me of most drafts that I'm in, if I'm in one of those top 5 picks. So that's just how I'm doing it. Nick Chubb's been, I think he leads the league in touchdowns. He has like 10 touchdowns through 8 games or something, or 11 touchdowns through 8 games. He's been a beast. He's been extremely active. He's been getting in the end zone, and he's a part of a team that wants to run the ball and can run the ball. So it's easy to see why Nick Chubb is that guy. Yeah, and again, a steal, a value pick in the draft. Let's look for him. Look how far down he is in those preseason rankings. Kind of crazy. So these are the top 4 guys. I think I would take any of these 4 guys before I would take any wide receiver. But then now you can start to introduce some wide receivers that I think are going to be that have been great and I think are going to continue being great. And the first one is going to be, I'm going to say Diggs because of Kupp's injury. I don't know how bad it is. It seems like he's going to play this week, but maybe it affects his production. And Diggs has been kind of matching his production anyway. So, and he's a part of a better offense. Stafford's on pace to only throw for 17 touchdowns on the season. So that scares me. Kupp needs to get a lot of those to match with Diggs, right? He needs to get 50% of those remaining 11 touchdowns that Stafford's projected to throw, right? If he's going to match Diggs. And I think Diggs has just more of a ceiling, more of a path to be the wide receiver 1 and continue to be the wide receiver 1. I think he's currently number 2 behind Kupp, but yeah, I'll take Diggs. A better offense, I think a better quarterback throwing him the ball, and he's also like the focal point of the Bills' offense. So it's going to be Diggs at this pick, followed by Kupp. I don't have to say much. Kupp. He's still doing Kupp things. He's fantastic. He's one of the best wide receivers. He had one of the best wide receiver seasons ever last year, and he was already off to a great start this season, despite the fact that the Rams were decrepit, right? So, yeah, you got 4 running backs off the board, 2 wide receivers. I think now here's where it starts to get a little bit squirrely, right? Here's where you can kind of make the case for like a Derrick Henry, a Dalvin Cook, or a Kamara, or you can even talk about guys like Kenneth Walker. You can talk about guys like Travis Etienne. I mean, where do you draft these guys, right? So if it's me and I'm drafting today based on what they've done and what, more importantly, what they will do the rest of the season, I think it's very difficult not to say Etienne just based on his usage last week in London. He looked great. I think that's a little bit too early, though. I just pump faked all of you guys by saying Etienne. I think oh man, is it Justin Jefferson? This is where it gets brutal, man. This is where it's tough because there's so many guys who you could say are going to finish the season on such a great note and have already had astounding seasons. I mean, Derrick Henry, dude. Derrick Henry, as of late, has been an absolute monster, dude. Since week 3, 25 points, 23, 27, 16, and then 35, dude, on that 219 yards against Houston in week 8. Crazy. And as the weather gets colder, as the fantasy footballers say, if it snows in Vermont, then the Yeti is out. Dude, Derrick Henry is out, and he's going to be feasting. It's tough. Dude, Derrick Henry's got RB1 potential rest of the season, especially as you look at the fact that their bye week is already done, and their schedule, other than Dallas in week 17 and Philadelphia in week 13, nothing really scares me on the slate, right? So Denver, not that great of a defense. Definitely not a defense capable of stopping a Derrick Henry. I think that Philadelphia game is the only one that I'd be concerned about. So, tough. It's tough. I think it's got to be Derrick because of everything I just said. He's just so fucking involved. He gets so many touches on a week-to-week basis. And am I wrong by thinking he's been getting a little more... He's been getting way more receptions than he usually does. I mean, last week only one. They didn't need to pass him the ball last week. But yeah, he's already got almost as many receptions and yards as he usually gets per season, right? So he had 15, 18, 19, 18. He's already got 14 on the season. So yeah, I don't see why Derrick Henry can't finish also, in the top three. So it's just, I think these other four guys, not only have they already been amazing, I think they're going to continue being amazing. Shit, man, I might put Henry over Chubb at that 4 spot, but it's too late to do that now. We're just going to push forward. And I think the next guy has to be Jamar Chase, in my opinion. He's too good, and he hasn't been getting any touchdowns. When you look at his player card, like, he's been getting you a crazy amount of points, especially in full point PPR. But he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1, which is kind of crazy, and he's still producing. I mean, you're still happy with the production that he's been giving you, right? So in half PPR, what is that, like 11 points here, or 13 points, and then here, 12 for 154. What is that? That's 21 points with no touchdowns. Like, you can't complain, and I think that's going to turn out. Also, they're past their bye. And they're one of the better teams in the NFC, actually, the Vikings. So I imagine him keeping it up. He's the wide receiver 4 or 5. I think the wide receiver 4 in half PPR. So why can't he continue that? And even though he hasn't been getting into the end zone, so I imagine some positive regression, in the touchdown department. I imagine he keeps beasting and feasting. And that kind of sums it up. Or I mean, we're kind of going to jump back to running back now, just because, like I said, it's just the safer position. And man, I'm going to get shit for this, but I'm putting Kamara at 9 after Henry. I have him in 2 of my main leagues, and he's not only looked great, he's finally had a pop-off week where he finally got some touchdowns, and he got 3 of them. Now, he had 0 touchdowns going into last week, so I was expecting some things to change, and it changed in a big way, and I think it's going to continue in that. I mean, I don't think he's going to be getting 3 touchdowns a week, but I think he's going to be definitely a beast. I think he's going to get you 20 points on average per week here on out. So it's Kamara for me. And I guess we can debate Kamara versus a guy like Kenneth Walker. And I think it's just provability. The fact that Kamara has proven that he could do this over the course of multiple seasons, right? Kenneth Walker is a rookie, and yes, he looks great. He looks fantastic. But I don't think I trust him quite as much as I trust a guy like Kamara, especially considering the fact that the Seahawks have better options all around the field. So DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett are going to be taking away opportunities from Kenneth Walker when they get into the red zone. Well, Kamara doesn't really have anyone at the moment. Now, when healthy, a guy like Landry, a guy like Michael Thomas, yes, and even Taysom Hill, who has been stealing touchdowns from him, I think that those are guys that I'm less worried about, especially because they've been injured the entire season. Michael Thomas has like a toe injury, which I don't know when he's going to be back. And when he is back, I mean, toe injuries tend to linger. I messed up my toe like 3 years ago, and it still clicks every time I walk. Like, that was 3 or 4 years ago, man. Like, I don't know what's going on with the Saints. Jarvis Landry also has been out the whole year, so I don't know. To me, I trust Kamara. He's just my boy. So I don't know. There's not much else I can say about that. And here, here's where it starts to get a little tough as well, because you could say ETN, you could say Walker. I think I'm gonna go with ETN. I just think he looked so fucking good last week. It's extremely tough to bet against. I think the Jags are slightly better than the Seahawks. I know their record doesn't show that, and I know that Geno Smith has been balling, and I know the Seahawks are number 1 in the division. I know, don't come for me, don't kill me, but I just think the Jaguars have a little more I think I trust Trevor Lawrence more than I trust Geno moving forward. I think the wheels are going to fall off at some point for Geno Smith. We know who he is. If it smells like poop, if it looks like poop, if it's been poop in the past, then it's still poop, I think. I don't know. I know Geno's looked great and he's been great, but I don't know, man. I expect something to change. I expect things to go back to how they used to be. So maybe I'm fully wrong, but I don't know. Etienne just looked so dynamic and fast. He pops off like a big run. Pretty much every week he'll have like a run of over 30 yards. And I know Kenneth Walker's also done that. But last week, if Kenneth Walker doesn't get into the end zone like he did at the end of the game, he has a pretty disappointing week, right? And Travis Etienne, he looked fantastic the entire day. The entire game he looked fantastic, and he got into the end zone. And I just think he's gonna be more capable of repeating that type of stuff. But we're just gonna go back to back Walker on that note here. Man, crazy. Anyone who drafted Etienne or Walker, you're feeling so good right now because you got top 10 running backs, a little bit circumstantial, or a little kind of the product of good luck and fortune. I mean, Etienne, they shipped off James Robinson, made him a clear workhorse. Kenneth Walker had, of course, the big injury to Rashad Penny, which makes him the clear workhorse. So that's fantasy, right? You just need to be lucky every now and then. And here at this pick, it's going to be Kelsey. You could even make the argument that Kelsey should be drafted much sooner. You can also say Josh Allen could be drafted much sooner. I mean, Josh Allen has been pretty much the MVP of fantasy. I just think in a single quarterback league, it's tough to make that. I mean, I would take Josh Allen. I'll take Josh Allen pretty much after CMC at the 2. Even in a one quarterback league, I would. Maybe I would have to have a couple of beers in me before I did that, but I would do it. There is a universe in which a drunk version of myself would pick Josh Allen at the 2. But for the sake of this, because skill positions is kind of where it's fun to see where they'd go. For the sake of this, at this turn pick, we'll do Josh Allen and Kelsey. But yeah, you can essentially make the argument that Josh Allen could have been taken much earlier, and I would not, and drunk Ron would not argue with you. And we're gonna do Kelsey. All right, next pick. I think it's going to be another wide receiver. I think based on what Tyreek Hill has done this season and how he's looked and how Tua has looked and how that offense looks as a whole, it's Tyreek. You get this is what I said, man. It's so tough. You could put Tyreek at this spot. You can put Tyreek right after Jefferson, right before Jefferson. You can put Tyreek right after Kupp. Like, these top like 20 or so players are so fucking interchangeable. Like, one could make the argument that Saquon should be the one, that Kupp should be the one, that Josh Allen should be the one, that Kelsey should be at like the 2 or 3. So this is where I'd do Tyreek at this 2.2. He just looks so good, dude. Last week, Tua was just lobbing the ball down the field. I'm pretty sure his eyes were closed. He's just lobbing it up. It's like floaters, dude. Absolute fucking floaters. And Tyreek Hill's just like, he doesn't even jump. He like emerges. He like floats up. Just mosses 2 defenders that are definitely taller than him, because everyone is taller than him. And he just like floats back down. He doesn't even like touch the floor. I don't think he was ever touching the floor, touching the turf or the pitch at any point in the game. He's just floating through, making crazy catches. He's just so good, so athletic. He's one of the funnest players to have in fantasy and to watch. I wish I had more of him. I took Josh Allen in the 2nd round with the hopes that Tyreek could potentially make it back to me in the 3rd round, and he did not. And I'm very sad about that. The dude in my league who has Tyreek Hill also has Justin Jefferson. And it's just like like, what the fuck, man? Like, you go up against him and you're like, okay, well, my body is ready. Like, and yeah, he's a beast. And dude, there's so many players I want to choose now. Like, I could say Devontae, I could say AJ Brown, but the second round is kind of not too dissimilar than the second round in the preseason. I think you got guys like, I think here it has to be a guy like Dalvin. I just think he's so solid. He's also been pretty solid for them. Finally got in the end zone, or not finally, but he's been getting in the end zone lately. He had some nice production last week in the receiving game. I think the Vikings, that trade they just made for Hawkinson, should be very beneficial for the entire offense as a whole. I think he's a great run blocker and a great receiving tight end, which should just help the offense as a whole. And I think Dalvin Cook, I mean, as the season progresses and it starts to get cold, teams start to rely more on the run. They want to establish run. They want to slow down the pace of play. They're a little more conservative with play calling because they're less likely to try things that would lead to them losing games, because wins are so much more important at this point. And wins are always important, but teams kind of know where they are in the standings. They know whether they can afford to lose games and stuff like that. So yeah, I just think the running backs tend to dominate these types of redraft mocks, in my opinion. But yeah, let's check out what else we got here. I think you can make the case for guys like Dameon Pierce, who's looked great. He's been an absolute workhorse for the Texans. Even in game scripts, which are very negative, he's still produced. I know he got bailed out last week with a receiving touchdown, but he looks great. I think, yeah, man, this is where it starts to improve. I think why not AJ Brown? Why not Devontae Adams? Devontae Adams has been great most weeks. He had a down week last week, but I think it's tough. Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, Jonathan Taylor's name is still staring at me right in the eyes, and it's like, how late now do we take him, or do we put him on the board? Because, as I said, this is kind of still speculatory. We expect him to also turn it around, right, rest of the season. I know he's been ass, he's been cheeks leading up to now, but he could turn around to have like a top 5 running back season the rest of the way. I know he's hobbled and injured, which is what makes me hesitant, but he definitely has like the talent. That offensive line still is talented from a personnel point of view. I know they're not playing very well, so it's like, how long do you wait? How far down does Jonathan Taylor fall? And I don't know. I think it's a little bit too early to take him right now. Yeah, it's tough. I think it's AJ Brown here. He's looked so good. He's looked great. Last week, the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, he had 3 touchdowns last week. So if you had him or played against him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's currently a timer. Something is counting down, but why? I just got a timer countdown for Sleeper, even though I never started the draft. That was a little creepy. Completely lost my train of thought. Who was I talking about? I was talking about AJ Brown. Dude, 3 touchdowns for the Eagles last week. It was the same exact pass all 3 times. It was a fade corner, like post route, not post route. It was like a corner, right side corner at the pylon, and he mossed his defenders each time. On like the third one, it was like the safety came over to help over the top. Mossed his ass too, fucking catches it, looks at both of them, points at each one of them, and I don't know what he said. I hope it was something like sorry, or little boy. I don't know what he said, but it was the best thing ever. He was just mossing everyone. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why he hasn't been getting into the end zone more. I don't know why they don't just feed him the ball every time. It's like, I'm fucking sick of Jalen Hurts getting rushing touchdowns. Like, let's see some Devontae Smith touchdowns. Let's see some more AJ Brown touchdowns. We don't want it. We're bored. We're bored of this Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown stuff. Unless you have him, you're probably not bored. But it's just, oh man, it's so fantastic to see him mossing people. So let's just do AJ Brown here. All right, and I think this is where you can start to. It can go either way. I mean, you could say, you know, Patrick Mahomes here. Why not? You could say Devontae Adams. You could go back to the running backs and say, fuck it, why not Jonathan Taylor here? I think that's not a bad spot for him. We're just powering through these at this point. Want to end this video pretty soon so that it doesn't turn out to be one of the longest videos of my life. Man, if Breece Hall would have stayed healthy, that would have been so nice. I think a guy like Jalen Waddle here makes sense. He's also been fantastic for them. And then, you know, there are some fringe guys who I think are great, but there's like some concerns about them. You know, like Josh Jacobs has been great. We'll put him there, but you could see that the Raiders' offense is capable of really disappearing. When they lean on the run and Josh Jacobs has a good game, they tend to win games. When they lose games, Josh Jacobs doesn't do much and doesn't look very good. Is it like the chicken or the egg? Is it because they don't lean on the run that they lose, or because they lose they don't lean on the run? I have no fucking clue. I have a lot of Raiders fans who they preach to me all day that when they don't run the ball and they can't run, they never win. So that's all I know. Jamar Chase is going to miss a lot of this season, so it's tough to draft him here. But I think this is where you could say like a guy like Hurts also makes sense. And probably missing some guys because I'm using sleepers. I'm using sleepers preseason rankings to kind of find the guys as I go. I don't have any of this stuff written down ahead of time, so I'm kind of shooting from the hip right now. But I think like a DeAndre Hopkins is also nice because he's been so fucking involved since he came back. The fact that he was suspended, based on how good he looks coming back from suspension, he should have been drafted earlier. So that's my argument for why I would take him here. People are saying, oh, but he missed, 6 weeks of the season. How can you draft him in the second round? How valuable is a wide receiver one for 11 weeks? I guess that's the argument. And maybe you're right. Imaginary person that I'm thinking about arguing with me. Maybe you're right. Like, okay, you can't take him in the second. 6 weeks is a good chunk. You could be 0-6 when you get him back, and by that point you lose by wasting your second round pick. But I wasted a third round pick on Pitts, and I'm not 0-6. So that's my counter argument to that. Maybe second round is a little too early. Maybe where he went in the fourth, 4 or 5 swing. Maybe that's actually the sweet spot. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think where he went in preseason ADP in like the 4th and 5th round, I don't think people were expecting him to come back and be this good, because I think what was kind of burned into his ADP was the fact that he was a touchdown dependent wide receiver one the season prior to his suspension. He was very touchdown dependent. He was not a volume receiver anymore. You could just go back and look at his logs from that season, right? So we'll go to 2021. I know he was injured, so that kind of affects things, but check out his target share. 8, 4, 6, 7, 9, 4. He was very touchdown dependent. I remember watching those games and seeing that he was really big play dependent, and when he didn't get into the end zone, you kind of felt a little sad, right? And that's what maybe people were expecting with that ADP. And I think seeing that he's become a possession receiver as well as a touchdown scoring guy, it's tough. It's tough not to say that he shouldn't be a second or third rounder. Maybe at the back of the second round makes sense, like right around here. And why not? Let's just do it. I'm down for the arguments. This is where like an Aaron Jones would go. I don't know. Do I end the video here? Do I keep kind of popping some off? CeeDee Lamb makes sense there. He's been great. Dak Prescott's back. I don't see why he doesn't remain or continue being great. I'll take. I think I would take a Mixon before a Fournette, but kind of back to back feels like it makes sense there. And then this is where I would start to draft guys like Mike Evans, like Deebo Samuel. I think Mark Andrews, he's injured, but yeah, that's brutal. I think a T Higgins like right here. Have I not drafted Chase? Yeah, I mean, I guess Chase right here also. I mean, if I know I'm losing Chase for 4 weeks, if it turns out to be 4 weeks, right? But for when he's, the rest of the time that he's not injured, you're getting this type of talent. 3rd round makes sense to me. I think just after or before Higgins also makes sense. Dude, as I'm looking at this board, this is such a fucking mess. I'm sure you guys are going to shit on this. I feel like there's a lot of dudes who should have been taken already, who I might have forgot. A Mark Andrews, where do you draft him? How long is he going to be out? They say he avoids major injury, and when he has played, he's been great. But does it continue? I think so. We'll just throw Mark Andrews here. Any other wide receivers? I guess a Michael Pittman. He's been pretty solid for them the whole season. You can make the case for a DK Metcalf here and Amon-Ra. Yeah. I think for the most part, this is good enough. I don't think we need to keep going. You guys kind of see the process. What process? I don't even know. I don't even really have a process. I've kind of just been hip firing. A Dameon Pierce probably makes sense here at this pick. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here, guys. That's to the 3-9. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's any names here that don't make any sense to you that you think should have been taken way earlier or way later. Let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was a little entertaining. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.